Hello students. So in this first lecture, we'll be talking about geological evolution and structure of India. What we will do is I'll make small video lectures of say 5 to 10 minutes each, and then you can take time to read about it and get more comfortable with it. The material that is shared on Google Classroom, one of the PDF is very detailed. We don't need all of that. It's just that you should have a broad idea about the sequence of how the rocks have evolved, right? The ages. Again, the broad eras, you don't need to go into periods if you talk about geological time scale. Broad rock type, don't worry about the detailed mineralogy, and what is the significance of these rocks. So that's what we'll be learning about in this under this topic. So in this video, I'll discuss briefly about the evolution of Indian Peninsula. I trust that you have revised your basics about the rock types from your undergraduation classes, as well as little bit about the basic plate tectonic theory, so that you are comfortable with the terminology that is used in this section. Okay, so largely I have made my lectures from the material that I've shared with you, and maybe something from this book that is by K.S. Valdia and by Bala Subramanian. This is a concise PDF that I think would be more helpful to you. Okay, also I request that you keep the geological time scale handy for the reference with you, so that you can look up for the time scale whenever these terms are used. So that way you will become more comfortable with the terminology. Okay, this is the approved Geological Society of America. Actually, there's a international organization which approves or modifies this time scale from time to time, and this I have shared also in your Google Classroom. What do we see? We see here Precambrian period, and after all these eras, that is Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic, they belong to the Phanerozoic eon. Okay, so Precambrian means before life. So before the signs or the life bloomed on Earth, we divided into several eons, Archean and Proterozoic. And of course, then there are smaller divisions further. You don't need to memorize all of that. Just a broad idea you should have. For example, Archean period extends from about 4500 million or 4.5 billion years to about 2500 million or 2.5 billion years. And then we have Proterozoic, and then we have the Paleozoic era, where we have several periods like Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous, Permian. And further, then we have the Mesozoic. Broad divisions are Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous, and the recent most is the Cenozoic here. This was the old terminology where you see the term tertiary, and now it has been divided into periods like Paleogene, Neogene, etc. Right? So this starts from about 66 million years, and then we have Quaternary, which is about 2.5 million years. Here is where you have the human evolution starting. So as you can see, very recent slice in the geological time scale. Of course, you don't need to study it in detail, but just to give you an idea how geologists, or more so paleontologists, people who study fossils, they have collected evidence and divided the Earth's history into these time slices based on what fossil was dominant when. Like, for example, you must have heard about the Jurassic, which is also known as the age of dinosaurs, because here many species of dinosaurs evolved. There was diversification, right? Similarly, Cambrian period that you see here is synonymous with the bloom of life. Okay, So just to give you an example, that is how you have divided the geologists have divided the geological time scale. So you will see such terms as we move further ahead in the video being used with the rock types or various geological formations or groups like Archean rocks or Proterozoic rock. That is just to signify the age of the rocks. Okay. So let's start with the little bit with the formation of Indian subcontinent, how these rock types have evolved. If we start from right from the Earth's history, that is about 4.5 billion years, the Archean period, the planet and the plates or the crust and the mantle that exists has undergone several cycles over it, right? So, for example, you all know that before about 140 million years ago, India was part of this huge island called the Gondwana. You can trace the boundary of Indian subcontinent here, right? And then it started drifting towards the north to meet the Eurasian plate here. That time it was the Laurasia. And about 100 million years, this Madagascar, which is on the coast of western coast of Africa, also separated from the Indian subcontinent plate, and India still kept on drifting towards the Eurasian plate. And there was a huge ocean in between called the Neo-Tethys Sea, which eventually closed, and we now have the Himalayan ranges here. The collision time is approximately about 50 to 55 million years ago, right? And the time when India started drifting towards the Eurasia, this entire plate has seen multiple phases of volcanism where magma was thrown out on the surface. It also passed over several hot plumes in the ocean, which again added magma onto this plate and which ultimately solidified to give us various rock types that we will be reading about. Also, as there were basins created in this basement of Indian plate, sedimentation or erosion from the topography happened, and then again those sediments solidified to give us various sedimentary rocks. Again there was a phase of volcanism which again led to formation of different types of igneous rocks, and then of course we have entire Himalayan orogeny or the evolution of Himalayan ranges as the two plates collided with each other. So this is precisely what we will be discussing under this lecture. So this is just to give you some more idea. And of course, if you've noticed that position of India in the geological past was in the southern hemisphere. Right now we are placed somewhere here, but the position of the subcontinent was near in the southern hemisphere, and it has gradually moved across the equator to attain its present position, right? So this diagram shows the drift since 71 million years ago. Here, at 55 million years ago, we say the ocean plates had collided, and finally the continents also collided, closing the Tethys Sea, and of course we have then phases of Himalayan orogeny, which we'll discuss in a separate lecture. So if we talk about the Indian subcontinent as a whole, including different countries in it, of course, it is called as the craton. Now, craton is a geological term which is used to refer to any old part of the rocks. It's suggested to be very old, nearly 4.5 billion years old. It is very stable in nature, right? And another term is used as Indian shield. So if you talk about the age, it is of Precambrian age. Now, we all know that India is the land of diversity when it comes to culture, it comes to language, food habits, even religion, the way we dress up. Of course, that is part of the culture. And also in terms of geology or the physiographic divisions, Again, India is a land of diversity. So broadly, we can divide the geology into three tectonic divisions, also known as the triple tectonic division. What are those? Those are the ancient block of peninsular India, those are the Himalayas and the associated young fold mountains, and of course the Indo-Gangetic plain where Banaras or BHU is also located. So one by one, we'll discuss all these major triple tectonic divisions. Okay, so this is a structural map of Indian subcontinent. What do you see here? You see several tertiary folded mountain ranges. Tertiary means 66 million and younger. So Himalayan ranges, your Hindu Kush, the Salt Range, Suleiman Range, all these ranges, Arkan Range ranges or the Myanmar ranges, which is part of the Himalayan orogeny, they all are shown in these black lines here. This line here marks the boundary of Indo-Gangetic plain. So this is the Indo-Gangetic plain, which contains the recent sediments or sediments which have been at least dated within the Quaternary period, 2.5 million years or younger. This is the large part of Indian peninsula here. And if you look at the legend here, what does it have? It mostly has the known as the peninsular block. We'll discuss what it comprises of. Peninsular block, this horizontal lines. This dashed broken horizontal line is also part of this peninsular block, but they are not exposed on the surface as well as in this part of the craton. And then you see these slanted lines, which are called the Deccan lavas or the Deccan traps. They are they again represent a phase of volcanism in the geological history where magma has now solidified to form these rocks. And then you see several troughs or basins. Okay, these are called the Gondwana troughs. Again, we'll discuss a little bit about them later. And they have the sedimentary rocks because after this craton was formed, there was erosion by the streams, sediments were deposited, and they have now formed these sedimentary rocks. This is the broad overview of the geology of the Indian subcontinent. So let's come back to the peninsula, which is also known as the craton. So in this zoomed map, where are the cratons located or the rocks which belong to the craton? They are denoted by this mesh type symbology here. So you can see they are located somewhere in Karnataka, some part of Tamil Nadu also. Then further you move towards the north, they are different, placed in form of different bodies. We'll discuss about these. These are known as the cratons and they are given different names. Dharwar craton, Bastar craton, Singhbhum craton. I'll show that in the next slides, right? And they are Archean cratons, as you can see in the legend also. Now, Archean refers to the time period. You can refer to the geological time scale, or they are about 4.5 to 2.5 billion years old. Okay, and of course, surrounding on the margins of these cratons here, we have the early Proterozoic mobile belts. Now, early Proterozoic again refers to the time period. Mobile belts are also part of the Indian cratons or the Archean cratons. They are just deformed margins of these cratons because there was continuous drifting of the Indian plate, right? As you have seen in the earlier slides. So the margins got deformed, okay, and they are called the mobile belts. And then of course we talked a little bit about the sedimentary basins. The basins were formed, you can see them here also. The basins were formed in the peninsular India. Those are also denoted here. And then we have the Gondwana basins. We'll discuss these in detail a little bit later. So in this diagram, you should just focus on the Archean cratons here, which are shown by this mesh type symbology. Now, if you talk about the Indian peninsula, it has several types of sediments which were deposited in different time periods. Each relates to a, what should I say, a geological event, and they have solidified to form the different rock types, except the recent most alluvium that refers to the soft sediment brought down by the rivers. Like example would be of Narmada and Tapti. So if you look at the oldest rocks, they are gneisses and granites, and you would know these are igneous rocks, and they are dated to Archean and Paleoproterozoic period. And then we have Dharwar and Aravali. Again, these are crystallines or the igneous rocks. Kudappa, Delhi, Vindhyan, they're all getting younger. These are the Triassic and Jurassic. They are the sedimentary rocks here. Again, coastal Cretaceous and Jurassic are the sedimentary rocks. Then we have another phase of volcanism, which has formed the Deccan traps or the igneous rocks of the Deccan. And then, of course, we move towards the tertiaries and the quaternary period. So we start from the oldest rocks, and there are youngest sediments in this Indian peninsula.